Welcome to Martian Mixed Martial Arts.
Wow. Wouldn't it be crazy if the aliens manufactured you to be a mixed martial arts fighter? They're like, let's see if we could just turn this
I'm
dude
sure
into a bad
I'm sure
motherfucker."
if it would have happened, I would have been much better than this.
Much better than this. You're the fucking champion. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
but if I would be alien manufacturer, I would be Superman, you know?
Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious beings tuning into the podcast. I welcome you to episode 49 of Martian Mixed Martial Arts. This week we will be analyzing and predicting all 13 fights on this weekend's UFC on ESPN card, headlined by Francis Ngannou versus Cain Velasquez. We will also be quickly recapping the UFC 234 pay-per-view that happened this past weekend towards the end of the podcast. We also might discuss Bellator's card coming up this weekend, which is Bellator 215 and 216, two events from Bellator this weekend, and we got odds on some of those fights, so we'll definitely mention those fights after the UFC this week. But first, we will be starting things off in Phoenix, Arizona for this weekend's UFC on ESPN card, the first UFC card on the main ESPN channel. It is a monumental event for the UFC. This event takes place on a Sunday, this Sunday, February 17th, 2019, starting off at 9 p.m. This one will be on ESPN Plus and ESPN. So Cain Velasquez got the UFC started on the Fox era back in 2011, and he's getting things started in the ESPN era in 2019. Funny how much has changed in the past 8 years, but Cain Velasquez is back, and we're really looking forward to him in this fight. It's going to be a great main event, and we actually have a very, very solid fight card from top to bottom for the UFC's debut on ESPN. So we are starting things off in the women's strawweight division. We have Alexandra Albu, who is 3-0, taking on Emily Whitmire, who is 3-2. The betting line for this one opened up Albu as the -195 favorite to Whitmire as the +155 underdog. Now looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see Albu at -130, Whitmire at +110. So a lot of action coming in on Emily Whitmire in this one. I'm going to agree with the line movement in it. It's just that opening line was set way too high. I do favor Alexandra Albu in this matchup, but the fact that it opened, almost 2-1 for her is crazy. So anybody who got that early action in on Whitmire, I congratulate you. It's for sure a good price. And where the price is now, it's more accurate. I think this is going to be a close fight. Neither of these women are too elite. Neither of them are too technical or polished in any aspect of MMA, honestly. So this is, going to be a real close fight. It's going to be a lot of scrambles, I think, a lot of pushing up against the cage. And, it's going to come down to, I think, the grappling exchanges, honestly. So Emily Whitmire seems like she wants to keep the fights at kickboxing range. She throws a lot of jabs. And, I don't know, she just doesn't look very comfortable. She wants to keep things at kickboxing range, but she doesn't have particularly good kickboxing. So it's going to be difficult for her to win this fight. There's no doubt in my mind that Emily Whitmire will not be able to keep Albu off of her. When I say that, she's not going to be able to use distance and leg kicks and jabs and her striking to keep the distance. She is going to end up in the clinch in this fight, and that's why I favor Alexandra Albu. She's a strong girl. She is Russian nationality, so that there could be some doping going on with her. Honestly, her fight back in 2015 or 16 this week I watched, she was jacked, and she looked a little less strong in her most recent fight against Kaylin Curran in 2017, but she still is a very, very strong girl. I mean, you can look at their arms and you see Albu's got biceps, she's got triceps, she's got every clearly defined muscles, and Emily Whitmire's arms are just kind of noodle like. So that's not a telltale sign of how this fight is going to go, but I really think that the strength is going to be a huge factor in this fight. I think Alexander Albu is going to be was going to be pushing against the fence. She's going to be looking to get takedown. She's going to look to get top position. She has good ground and pound. Honestly, when she gets her opponent down, she lands some good shots, but she gets so excited that she's landing shots, and she loses position. So she'll have mount and she'll land a couple ground and pound shots, and then she'll lose the position, or she'll be standing up while her opponent's on the ground and she'll land a couple shots and then she'll get swept or something like that. So look to see if Albu has made any improvements. It's funny because even though this is a low-level matchup, I did do a lot of research on this fight, and I think I have a pretty clear way of pretty clear thinking of how this fight's going to go down. So Whitmire is going to be trying to keep that distance. Albu is going to be trying to close it. She's going to be trying to make this fight ugly. And, I just favor Albu to get that type of ugly fight one. She fought against Kaylin Curran and had that type of fight where, she was, it was back and forth from the feet to the floor, and there were a lot of exchanges and a lot of reversals. And, that's the type of fight I think that this is going to be. That's the type of fight Albu won against Curran, so I favor her to win this one. Emily Whitmire is kind of, I would say she's a little less well-rounded everywhere than Albu is. So Albu is going to be the pick in this one, and I would stay away from the betting window in this one, though. The next fight takes place in the bantamweight division. We have Luke Sanders, who is 12-3, taking on Renan Barão, who is 34-7. The opening betting line for this one was Luke Sanders -140, Renan Barão +100. Now looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see Sanders -175 to Barão at +155. So even more money coming in on Luke Sanders as the favorite over former champion Renan Barão, and I really don't blame it. I think that, this fight can be summarized in one sentence, and that is Renan Barão is done. He's fought better. He's been the more technical fighter in the past couple of his fights, but his physicality, his chin, his cardio, his aggressiveness is gone. It really is. He at one point he was one of the top pound for pound fighters in the world, and now he's 1-5 in his last 6 fights. It's really, really shocking to see. It could be a combination of things. The guy's had 40 fights in his career. There is some USADA speculations, and then of course TJ Dillashaw put the beat down on him. Homeboy beat up on Barão for 9 rounds straight or something like that. So really hard to come to recover from those beatings that he took, and he just really hasn't been the same. Losing to Sterling Kelleher and Andre Ewell in his last fight, that guy who was making his UFC debut on short notice, who had a bad ground game, just Barão was just not able to execute a game plan. It doesn't matter that Luke Sanders has bad takedown defense and bad jiu-jitsu, and got submitted in his last fight. Barão cannot execute a game plan. He doesn't have the mental ability nor the physical ability to do it anymore. You saw him in his last fight. He rocked Andre Ewell with a punch, and then he sprinted at him with his hands down, going crazy, and he got countered and dropped. It's like his IQ seems to be gone as well. He's, like I said, he still is a very sharp fighter in his technique, but man, his physical abilities just do not back up that technique. So Luke Sanders in this fight is going to be looking to keep it standing, and I really think that he will easily outstrike Renan Barão. It sounds absolutely crazy to say that. The fact that this lower level bantamweight is a favorite to outstrike Barão, but it's going to happen. Sanders has got decent boxing. He's got a good body kick, and he was actually beating Andre Sukumtat in their fight, but then he got wild and got countered and knocked out in the second round of that one. But he's rebounded well since then. He had a nice fight against Patrick Williams where he fought really composed, really technical, and won that fight over a 15-minute decision. So I'm expecting him to do that same thing here. He's got to avoid the ground like he did not against Hani Yahya in his last fight when he got heel hooked. But I think that he will have a pretty easy job defending the takedowns of Brow or dealing with the striking of Brow, and it'll be a nice win for Luke Sanders. So the pick is going to be Sanders, and I really hope that Renan Barão retires after this fight, because it's getting pretty sad to see him out there. Next fight in the women's flyweight division, women's strawweight division, we have Jessica Penne, who is 12-5, taking on Jodie Esquibel, who is 6-4. The betting line for this one opened up Jessica Penne as the favorite at -185. Esquibel at +145. Now looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see Penne at -145, Esquibel at +125. Now I'm probably butchering this girl's last name, Jodie Esquibel, but I know she's an avid listener of the Martian MMA podcast, so sorry, Jodie. So getting over to this fight, this is. If you thought that Albu versus Whitmire was a low-level MMA matchup, you're in for a shocker in this one, because this is atrocious that this fight is happening in the UFC. We have Jessica Penne, who is 1-3 in her last 4 fights over the past 5 years. She's had 4 pro fights in 5 years, and she's 1-3. We got Esquibel, who is 0-2 in the UFC and 1-4 in her past 5 fights. So again, these are bottom of the barrel fighters. It's a damn shame that we have to research these fights. It's a damn shame that the UFC is promoting these fights. It's a damn shame you have to sit through and watch them on fight night, because it's nothing against these women. They're just not UFC caliber. Jessica Penne maybe at one point was, but she's, fought once a year for the past 3 or 4 years, and she's got no skill left. Esquibel is just a former boxer who transitioned to MMA and just never really figured it out. Never really, got anything going for him. Despite Esquibel being a boxer, she's got terrible footwork. She leans into all of her combinations. She leaves her face right out there for people to punch her back. She got her face butchered against Karolina Kowalkiewicz in that fight. That was a pretty cruel matchup. And then Jessica Penne, she's good on the ground. She's got herself a jiu-jitsu black belt, but she's not good at getting the fights to the ground. She doesn't have much wrestling. She doesn't, her striking is very sloppy. She doesn't know how to. I don't know, man. I was watching her. She does have a good clinch. Jessica Penne has a very good clinch. When she wraps a girl up and clinches her, she throws pretty wicked knees, and that's definitely her strongest suit. And she can get the takedown from the clinch too. So Jessica Penne is going to be trying to clinch Esquibel up in this fight. She's probably not going to want to deal with the boxing, considering Esquibel will probably have the better hands in there. But Penne is going to be looking to clinch this thing up, land some knees against the fence, maybe get takedowns, win rounds on top. But, I watched Jessica Penne's last fight against Danielle Taylor, who is, again, one of the lowest level females on the roster. And Danielle was standing in front of her the entire time. And Penne just, I don't know, doesn't have the striking to win the fight. It wasn't even competitive, Danielle Taylor is a really low output, really predictable, really, overhand right type of girl. And Penne just couldn't do anything to make the fight competitive. So her striking is really hopeless. I think that, she will win, Penne will win this fight just based on the clinch alone and the fact that Esquibel is just nowhere near UFC level. This one's gonna be it's gonna be a painful one to sit through, ladies and gentlemen. So the pick is gonna be Penne, and honestly, where the price is for her, I can't put a dime on Penne because I just can't trust them. I would have to take 2 showers if I lost any money on her. But the price where she's at now is actually a good price. Next fight in the lightweight division, we have Scott Holtzman, who is 12-2, taking on Nick Lentz, who is 29-9-2. The betting line for this one opened up Scott Holtzman as the -175 favorite to Nick Lentz at +135. Looking over at 5dimes.eu, we see Scott Holtzman -170 to Nick Lentz at +150. So There's two-way action coming in on this fight. This is a close matchup, but I'm really gonna favor Scott Holtzman in this one. I think I was just so impressed by his last fight. Both of these gentlemen fought on UFC 229. Both of them picked up finishes, TKO finishes for that matter too. So they really impressed on that card. But just there's difference between those wins. Nick Lentz beat up, an old, slow Gray Maynard who is, a shot fighter, brow level shot, and he looked good. He took him down, dominated the better wrestle, got on top, landed some great ground and pound, and then eventually finished him with a head kick and then some more ground and pound. So it was a good performance from Lentz, but Scott Holtzman beat Alan Patrick, who was a guy coming in there as like a 3-1 favorite, a guy who was expected to win the striking. He's got real long, powerful striking, and he's got a great ground game too. And Holtzman beat him in the striking, and he took him down, got top position, and rained some nasty ground and pound to get in the knockout. Just a vicious knockout over Alan Patrick with some elbows on the ground. So, he's a great wrestler. He's got good top pressure, and once he gets on top, it's going to be hard for you to get him off. Alan Patrick could not get Holtzman off of him, so it might be difficult for Lentz to get him off him. Lentz is a small lightweight. He fought a good portion of his career at featherweight, and now he's testing the waters at lightweight, but Holtzman is a big lightweight. I think we're going to see a big size advantage in this fight. I think Holtzman will probably have 3 inches on Lentz, and maybe even maybe 5 to 10 pounds in there too, so... Holtzman's got good striking. He throws a lot of power. He's not the best defensively, but I don't think he has to be too worried about too much with Lentz on the feet. He's not really known as too much of a power striker of his own right. Holtzman's got good kicks. He throws leg kicks. He throws body kicks. He mixes up to the head. It's usually the right kick. He doesn't really throw too many left kicks, but that right kick is, it's going to be a weapon to look out for. Might be a little bit less of a factor in this fight because it is an orthodox versus an orthodox matchup, while Holtzman's last fight was orthodox versus southpaw, and that's why that right kick was having so much success versus Patrick. So I really expect Holtzman to, push the pace in this one, to look for takedowns, do damage on top. It's not the best comparison, but Nick Lentz fought Islam Makhachev, was taken down, controlled, and wasn't able to get up at all versus Islam Makhachev. Now, Makhachev is one of the best grapplers on the roster, but Holtzman is a very, very elite grappler of his own right. So I don't expect Holtzman to be as dominant as Makhachev was, but I think that he will win this fight. And at the price of minus 150 or something like that, where he's at right now, minus 170, I think that's a really great price on Scott Holtzman. So the pick is going to be Holtzman to get this one done. Next fight in the women's flyweight division, we have Andrea Lee, who is 9-8, taking on Ashley Evans Smith, who is 6-3. The opening betting line for this one opened up Andrea Lee minus 215, Evan Smith at plus 165. Since then, line margins tightened up. Lee is now minus 165, and Evan Smith at plus 145. I would agree with the line movement in this one. I think the opening line was set a little bit too high. I think this one is actually going to be competitive. We saw Lee make her debut in her last fight against Macedo, and she looked really, really good in that fight. Not like Macy Barber level good. We've seen women have better debuts than Andrea Lee did, but she still looked very solid. She showed off the fact that she's got striking, she's got takedowns, and she's got some good submissions as well. She really showcased that all in that fight, but it didn't really blow my socks off. Her striking defense looked a little bit suspect. It seemed like she could definitely get boxed up by a good striker, which Evan Smith I think is a good striker for women's 125. So and Lee's IQ, she goes for a lot of head and arm throws. That's not very good. Head and arm throws are a really risky submission in MMA, and she goes for them a lot. So Evan Smith, not the greatest on the ground, or not the greatest jiu-jitsu, but she's got good takedown defense. She actually stuffed 4 of 5 of Caitlin Vieira's takedown defenses in their fight at 135. So that was a bigger girl in Caitlin Vieira, and one of the better wrestlers in the women's in all of the UFC for women. So Evan Smith defending a lot of those takedowns is pretty impressive, and Evan Smith's striking is it's good, it definitely has its holes. It seems a little bit like robotic and a little bit plodding forward, not too much movement, while Lee is moving around a lot more, throwing a lot more diverse attacks, while Evans is kind of just typical kickboxing. But she moves forward a lot. She's got good pressure. She's got good output, good cardio. So that's where I think this fight's going to get interesting. Is on the feet. If Evan Smith is able to stuff those takedowns of Andrea Lee, I think that this fight is going to be razor thin. I think that it could be a split decision type of fight. It really just depends on where the fight plays out. Because if the fight ends up in the clinch, man, I favor Lee in that one. She's got strong clinch. She's got real strong clinch and good knees as well. She really spams some good knees in that clinch. So I don't really know Evan Smith's clinching abilities too well, but I was impressed with how strong Lee seemed in that clinch. So if the fight gets to the floor, I really favor Lee. I honestly think that Lee could snatch up a submission. Her sub threats looked really good in her fight against Macedo, and if the fight ends up on the floor, I might even lean Evan Smith's way. So where the price is at now, there's been a lot of money coming in on Evan Smith all week, and I would pass on this fight. Probably dog or pass. I wouldn't trust Andrea Lee at -165. I think there's just too much unknown about her so far. But this is a fight where two women who deserve to be in the UFC. They've got good, well-rounded skills, and this one should be a good fight. So looking forward to this one. And I'm going to slightly lean Andrea Lee's way. Next fight in the bantamweight division, we have Manny Bermudez, who is 13-0, taking on Benito Lopez, who is 9-0. The betting line for this one opened up Manny Bermudez as the -305 favorite to Benito Lopez at +225. Now looking over at 5dimes.eu, we see Manny Bermudez -185 to Benito Lopez at +160. So a lot of money coming in on Benito Lopez. I think it's rightfully so. Where the line is at now seems a lot more accurate than -300 for Manny Bermudez. I think Bermudez should be the favorite in this fight, but he certainly is not -305 level. So this fight is it's pretty much a grappler versus striker matchup. Benito Lopez is the flashy striker. He throws good head kicks, flying knees, spinning kicks. He loves to get in brawls on the feet or just wild exchanges. He's had some very entertaining fights so far in the UFC. Benito Lopez against Albert Moraes, man, that fight was just crazy. His fight against Steven Peterson, the Contender Series, another really close fight. But Peterson was able to take him down in that fight. Lopez's takedown does not look good at all. When someone grabs a hold of him, he doesn't really fight the hands. He doesn't look to defend the takedown with wrestling. He kind of just hits his opponent wherever he can, looks for some punches but that's not going to stop the takedown, not at all, and especially not against Manny Bermudez, who's going to be relentlessly looking for that takedown. But it's not an end all be all matchup with the grappling, because Bermudez his takedowns aren't very good. He sometimes he leans in for takedowns when it's too far a distance, and Lopez could easily counter it with a kick or a flying knee. Like I said, those flying knees are legit. He throws them fast, and they might seem like a flashy technique, but it's a great fucking counter to a double leg from distance that Manny Bermudez likes to throw? A flying knee. So I really think that this fight could be closer than people imagine. Bermudez does have a really good jiu-jitsu, man. If this fight goes to the ground, honestly, I think that Bermudez will get the submission. He throws up so many submissions. He goes armbar to triangle to omoplata to going for a leg lock, and he's just really active from his guard. He likes pulling guard. He can do it pretty well. So even if this fight ends up in a clinch against the cage, look for Manny Bermudez to jump guard in this one, and that's going to put Lopez in a world of trouble. But Benito Lopez fighting out of Team Alpha Male, he could have, easily gotten a lot better in the past couple months. I think he's actually not fought in the past. Yeah, he hasn't fought since December of 2017. So a 15-month layoff for Benito Lopez in there. No, there's no reports on whether it was an injury. It was an undisclosed injury, so we have no idea what was preventing Lopez from fighting this long. But that's a lot of time to improve for such a young guy like Lopez, especially at a really good camp in Team Alpha Male. Lopez being only 24 years old, so his takedown defense could have vastly improved in this one. His distance management could have improved, and he could make this fight. He could knock Bermudez out really easily. So I definitely don't think this fight's going to the decision. I think that it's either Bermudez by submission or Lopez by knockout. So this one's going to be a banger, really. I think this is the most likely fight of the night on this card. Maybe not the closest matchup, the most highest skill matchup, but this one's going to be a really exciting fight. Can't wait for this one. And I'm going to slightly lean Manny Bermudez's way. I think that he will get Benito down and get the submission at some point. But not too confident of a pick, and minus 185. I don't think I would pay that juice on Bermudez. I think there's, his striking defense is too much of a liability, and he could easily get knocked out in this one. So I would go with probably dog or pass Benito Lopez plus 160, and if anybody got Benito over 2-1, that's a really great price. Next fight in the featherweight division, this fight's in the bantamweight division as well. We have Jimmy Rivera, who is 22-2, taking on Aljamain Sterling, who is 16-3. The betting line for this one opened up Jimmy Rivera minus 265 to Aljamain Sterling at plus 185. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see Sterling plus 125, and Rivera at minus 145. So a lot of action coming in on the Funkmaster Aljamain Sterling's line in this spot. So interesting. This is a really good fight. Two of the top 10 guys at bantamweight for sure. No doubt these guys have really been in the mix for the past couple of years, and we're finally getting to see them match up. Both these guys are New York, New Jersey type guys, so I'm sure they've known about each other for years, and they've been anticipating this matchup for a while, and luckily we're finally getting to see it play out. It's a damn shame they didn't do this fight in New York or something like that, because these are two of the best New York fighters in the history of the UFC, honestly. They're really great fighters. I'm a big fan of both of these guys, but this fight's going to be I really lean Jimmy Rivera's way in this one. It's going to be hard for Aljamain Sterling to dictate this fight. He's got really nice kicks on the feet, but the boxing is going to be a big differential in this one. I think that Rivera has the much superior boxing. He's got good defense as well. He's a really sound technical striker on the feet. He's got good takedown defense as well. And he's only really lost to, elite strikers. He's only got 2 losses in his career. One was, I think, his second fight in his career. And then one was that knockout loss to Marlon Moraes only a few months ago, maybe 8 or 9 months ago. He got caught with that head kick and got put away in that one. But, Aljamain's he's going to not let Rivera get at distance, though. He's going to be looking to be throwing those body kicks, throwing leg kicks to keep Rivera at distance, and Rivera is going to be trying to close that distance and get into boxing range. So if Sterling can keep this fight on the outside, like really far distance, and keep it at straight kicking range, it will be competitive, because that kicking range is not easy to negate. Rivera will have some trouble with those kicks of Sterling, but Sterling really shines when he gets the fights to the floor. He's got great submissions. He's got really creative grappling. We saw that over. Was that his last fight when he got the submission with the knee bar? Yeah, I think it was against Cody Stamann, UFC 228. He pulled off that, I think it's called the Pulev stretch or something like that. Let me see if Tapology has the name on it. I don't think it will. It just says knee bar. But yeah, you saw in that fight the creativity of his grappling. He got position on a good wrestler in Cody Stamann, and he was able to just use his jiu-jitsu to end that fight. So really impressive victory from Sterling in that fight, and he's gonna need to keep up that same momentum to win this fight. If Aljamain somehow gets this fight to the floor, man, I really favor Aljamain in this one. I think that he's he could win rounds on. And, he's got good cardio. I think that this one could get really interesting really quick. But Rivera's takedown defense is good. He is not easy to take down. He's training with, a really, really good camp out of Tiger Schulman's. They got Julio Arce. They got Shane Burgos, Lyman Good, Mike Trezano. A lot of guys, going on really good streaks in the UFC right now. So I slightly lean Rivera's way because I think that he has the striking edge in this one. And I think I'm relying on his takedown defense to be good. But where the initial line was, I think that there was value on Sterling, plus 180 in that range. But where the line's at now, minus 140, minus 150, I think that Jimmy Rivera's got value on him now. So Rivera's really good at winning decisions. He's good at fighting safe, and I think that he will do that in this fight and will win a decision. So the pick is going to be Jimmy Rivera, and really expecting a good fight. Would not be mad at all if Sterling pulled off the upset. Next fight in the featherweight division, we have Andre Fili, who is 18-6, taking on Miles Jury, who is 17-3. The betting line for this one opened up Miles Jury minus 195 favorite to Fili at plus 155. Looking over at 5dimes.eu, we currently are seeing Andre Fili as the plus 130 underdog to Miles Jury at minus 150. So action coming in on Andre Fili in this one, tightening the line margins up. I agree with it. I think the opening line was set a bit too high at Miles Jury, almost 2-1. But again, another tremendous matchup in these UFC on ESPN card. The UFC really brought the heat for this first fight card on ESPN. So Andre Fili is he's a great scrappy fighter. He all of his fights are contested on the ground and on the feet. He's got good striking, good kicks, and he's got the ability to mix it up with a takedown, to go for submissions, get some top position. But it's going to be hard for him to take down Miles Jury in this one. Miles Jury's got really good takedown defense. He's got great jiu-jitsu too. So if you take him down, you're likely to get swept. You're likely to be put in threat of a submission, or get reversed. Miles Jury has done that in a lot of his fights, just reverse takedowns with a quick sweep and got the fight right back to the feet. So. And Jury's striking looks pretty good. Despite the fact he got knocked out in his last fight against Chad Mendes, his striking is very good. That was kind of a low power level shot he got caught with. So Jury's chin is a little bit suspect, but his boxing defense too obviously is just not that great because that punch did get through on Mendes, but. Fili is not the same fighter that Mendes is. He doesn't carry near the power, and he does not have the boxing skill that Mendes does. Also doesn't have the threat of the takedown that I'm pretty sure faked Jury out. Mendes faked the takedown and then came high with the left hook, and it floored Jury, eventually getting the finish in that one. I don't think Fili has that type of power or those type of setups. He's just not that type of fighter. He likes to keep it at kicking range, and then every now and then mix it up, go for a takedown. But I don't think he will be looking for a takedown in this one. I think that Jury might be the one looking for takedowns. If Jury fights offensively with his wrestling and gets top position, I think he will win this fight fairly easily. Honestly, I just think his position. He gets position on you. Doesn't really care about submissions too much. He wants to just win rounds, tire you out, and that position, man. I'm telling you, he gets top position and he just won't let you out. I don't think Fili will be able to sweep or get out of that bottom position in this fight if this ends up on the floor. So Fili is going to want to keeping this on the feet. It'll be competitive on the feet. They'll be trading kicks, and I think the striking is just very, very even in this fight. So Where the opening line was, I'd say the value was on Feely, but again, in this spot right now, Jury minus 150, I think that's a good price for Feely, for Jury. So the pick is going to be Miles Jury. I think that he will get this fight to the floor. He will dictate, the rounds on the floor, and he will win a decision, probably 3 rounds to nothing, honestly. So the pick is going to be Jury. Next fight in the welterweight division, we have Brian Barberena, who is 14-5, taking on Vicente Luque, who was 14-6-1. The betting line for this one opened up Vicente Luque as the favorite at minus 385 to Barberena at plus 265. Looking over at 5dimes.eu, we see Luque at minus 400 and Barberena at plus 325. So even more money coming in on Vicente Luque in this spot, despite him, opening up as almost a 4-1 favorite. I don't agree with it. I think it's just a little too wide right now. I think Luque should be the favorite, maybe somewhere in the range of minus 200, minus 250, 300 at the most. But Barberena has, come through as an underdog multiple times. The guy has been constantly underrated by the books, and he comes through as that dog a few times. Let's see, against Warley Alves, he was a huge dog. He won that fight. Sage Northcutt was a big dog. Joe Ellenberger was a big dog. He won that fight. And, he's just constantly plus 250 against Chad LaPriest. That was a real competitive fight. Plus 235 against Covington. He lost that fight pretty decisively. And Barberena, again, a close fight with Leon Edwards in that plus 250 range. So he's constantly, plus 250 or something like that against a guy who, really doesn't deserve to be minus 300 or 400. But, Luque is a great fighter, man. Not taking anything away from Luque. He's got extremely powerful striking. His overhand right is one of the best punches in the sport, honestly. He's also got a killer left hook. He's got power in both hands. He sets it up with leg kicks. He tortures your legs. He, attacks that calf and, gets you thinking about that leg kick and then lights you up with punches. Usually getting the knockout or the submission. He's got really good submissions as well. If he hurts you on the floor, he won't waste his time going for ground and pound. He'll snatch up a sub. Just like he got that Darce choke. And who the hell was he fighting? I was just watching this fight. Let me see. Vicente Luque got the Darce choke on Nico Price. Yeah, Nico Price, a very powerful striker of his own right, and was undefeated coming in that fight. And Vicente Luque handed him his first loss after he hurt him on the feet with a punch and then was able to cinch up that choke. Very nicely done by Vicente Luque. But Barberena does well against strikers. He's fought guys like Warley Alves, like Chad LaPriest, like Leon Edwards, all guys who were I think favored to beat him, and he did really well against them, winning one of those fights and then having competitive decisions in the other two. So I think some people are picking Barberena based on the fact that he does perform well as an underdog. I wouldn't bet on him strictly on that fact alone. I think that it's just it's a winnable matchup. Luque doesn't have impeccable boxing defense. He's certainly hittable, and Barberena's got some power. He's got good boxing. He's hard to take down, so if he could very well make this fight interesting on the feet, stuff some takedowns, and then take over this fight in the later rounds if Luque maybe gasses himself out trying to finish. So where the price is at now, I'd say the value is on Barberena, but the pick, I think Luque will get this one done. If he fights composed and, goes for a decision win via striking, I think that he'll win this fight easily. But if he gets wild, chases that finish, and gets into a dogfight with Barberena, that's when it gets really close. So the pick is going to be Luque, but I would stay away from laying the chalk on him in this one, and it's going to be a dog or pass in the betting window. Next fight in the featherweight division, we have Alex Caceres, who is 14-11, taking on Kron Gracie, who is 4-0. The betting line for this one opened up Kron Gracie as the minus 285 favorite to Caceres at plus 205. Now looking over at 5dimes.eu, people betting down Kron all the way to minus 335, Caceres up to plus 275. So interesting. Kron Gracie making his UFC debut at the green record of 4-0, and he's already minus 335 against Alex Caceres, a proven guy in the UFC, 9-9 in the UFC. So he's got more than four times as many fights in the UFC alone as Kron does MMA fights in general. So, Kron Gracie is he has just become one of the best grapplers on the roster. He's, a no-gi champion, world champion. He's been, he's the only son of Rickson Gracie, of course, coming from the legendary Gracie lineage. Some of the best fighters that ever walked the planet, Royce Gracie, Rickson Gracie, and Kron is now in the spotlight as being that Gracie. They have Neiman Gracie over in Bellator, who's doing good things right now, but Kron in the UFC, it has a huge spotlight on him right now, and finally making his UFC debut after getting a little bit of experience over in Japan and Ryzen. He picked up some good wins over there. He definitely was not fighting super easy competition. He was fighting fighters on the tailing end of their career, and Hideo Takoro and Tetsuya Kawajiri. Both of those guys had over 50 fights. They're, way older, in their late 30s, guys who are just Japanese MMA legends. But, nevertheless, those guys can still grapple. They're, tremendous lifelong grapplers. And Kron was able to choke both of them out. So all four of his wins coming by the way of submissions so far. He, obviously he's looking to take this fight to the floor. He doesn't really wrestle too much. He likes pulling guard. He likes clinching up, maybe landing a few punches in the clinch and then jumping and guard real quick. There's no shame in pulling guard. He's just, it's a really effective way to get the fight to the floor without, risking a takedown, using all the energy of a takedown, trying to get in scrambles, just clinch up and jump guard real quick. And Gracie does it really good. He doesn't seem too comfortable striking at range. He looks, pretty bad striking at range. He doesn't have much head movement. He doesn't have much striking of his own right. He's got, some decent straight punches, training with the Diaz brothers. I'm sure Richard Perez out in California. But he's, there's really not much use in him. You'd like to see him get, competent on the feet, but it's just not something that happens too often. When someone is an elite talent in one discipline of MMA, they usually just win their fights based on that way, and they never adapt the other aspects of their game to be equivalent to their strong suit, if you understand what I'm saying. So he has tremendous grappling, not very good striking, but he's fighting one of the, I wouldn't say a lower level opponent, because Caceres definitely has very great skills, but one of the lower end of competition in the UFC right now. Caceres, his fight IQ would probably be his worst enemy. He just doesn't make good decisions in the cage. He fights pretty recklessly. He gets taken down a lot. Does not have good takedown defense. Does not have much power on the feet. He's got good submission defense. So if he gets taken down, he defended against Kyo-Hun Kang's takedowns very well. Who is one of the best grapplers in the UFC right now as well. Is Kang. We saw that this past weekend in his fight against Ishihara. And Caceres did well defending the grappling of that fight, and ended up going on to win that fight back in 2013. So that's a really bright spot on Caceres' record, especially being a similar type of matchup. But Gracie is just on a different level than Kang, so I really don't expect Caceres to defend the takedowns or defend the submission attempts of Gracie very well. So Caceres wants to keep this fight at range. He wants to keep it on the feet. He does not want to clinch up with Gracie where he can pull guard. He doesn't want to get caught against the fence where Gracie can shoot a takedown. Even though we have not seen Kron have much wrestling success in MMA so far, he certainly has takedowns. The guy's a no-gi world champion. Those fights go to the floor a lot too, and he definitely has good takedown abilities if needed. So This fight's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be, a chess match if Gracie can get this fight to the floor. If he does, I think he will get the submission. If he doesn't, I think he'll lose this fight. Probably not by knockout, just because Caceres doesn't have much power, but he will get outstruck very decisively if he does not get this fight to the floor. But I think he will. I don't think that Caceres will be able to stuff takedowns to prevent this fight from going to the floor in all 3 rounds, all 15 minutes. I think at some point Gracie gets him down and gets him out of there. So the pick is going to be Gracie, but where the money line is currently at, there's no fucking way I would pay money on Kron Gracie making his debut at -335. The value is clearly on Alex Caceres. He can certainly, he can win this fight either by TKO or by decision. While I think Gracie's only way of winning this fight is by submission. I don't think he could win a decision if Caceres defends all of his submissions and Gracie's just on top the entire fight, winning the rounds on top. But I really don't see that happening. I see Gracie locking up the submission if this fight gets to the floor, and should be a good one. Next fight in the women's strawweight division, we have Cynthia Calvillo, who is 7-1, taking on Courtney Casey who is 8-6. The betting line for this one opened up Cynthia Calvillo as the -285 favorite to Courtney Casey at +205. Since then, even more money coming in on Cynthia Calvillo, pushing her to -300, while Casey is up to +250. I guess I would agree with the line movement in this one. Not much movement has come in, but it's definitely come in a little bit on Calvillo's way. She's, just the clear favorite in this matchup. She's looks really good in her last fight against Bothello. She's got some, she picked up some good submission wins in her UFC career so far. She was able to, win a decision against Joanne Calderwood, a great grappler and striker of her own right. And now she's going against Casey, who's, I would say has, not had too great of a career in the UFC so far. She's had a lot of close fights. She's picked up a few nice wins, but she's come up short in a lot of her fights as well. She's lost 5 decisions in the UFC. So she's not a terrible fighter. She just has trouble putting it all together in there and winning the fights decisively. She's very awkward on the feet. Her footwork is not very good. She's very robotic, and her feet don't follow along very well with her. She overextends herself, and she's heavy on her feet. It seems like she's got ankle weights tied down to her legs. She's not moving around. She's not looking to sprawl. She will have to fight differently in this fight, or she will lose easily. Cynthia Calvillo is going to be looking for that takedown. She's, one of the best female grapplers in the UFC right now. She's got great top control. Once she takes you down, it's going to be hard for you to get up. She's got good submissions. We saw that in her last fight against Bothello, submitting a great grappler of her own right. She submitted Pearl Gonzalez. She's submitted a lot of girls in the UFC. So look out for those submissions of Calvillo. That's definitely going to be the biggest threat in this fight. I just don't see how Casey wins this fight. Maybe by some type of fluke armbar of her own. She's got a decent armbar. She when Casey is in guard on her back, she can throw up an armbar and threaten with it. She did that a few times against Michelle Waterson. Michelle Waterson, one of the smaller 115-pound women on the roster, was able to take Casey down easily. Not really known for her wrestling either. And she was able to level change on Casey pretty successfully. I think she shot 3 times and was able to get the takedown twice. Casey showed a decent sprawl once at the time, but that was in the 3rd round when she had already been losing the fight. And, even though when she's on her back, though, like I said, she can throw up an armbar. That's definitely her best submission. And, that's the real only chance I see Casey having at winning this fight. There's no way that she's going to be able to keep Calvillo at distance for the whole 15 minutes. There's no way she's going to be able to stun her on the feet with some strikes. It's just a really hard matchup for Casey to win in this one. So the pick is going to be Calvillo to take her down and probably get the submission on Casey in this one. So the pick is going to be Calvillo, and look for some sub props inside the distance props on Calvillo. Now we are at the co-main event of the evening in the lightweight division. We have Paul Felder, who is 15-4, taking on James Vick, who is 13-2. The betting line for this one opened up James Vick as the Paul Felder as the -175 favorite. James Vick at +135 right now. Looking over at 5dimes.eu, the line has since flipped. James Vick at -125, Paul Felder at +105. So, interesting line movement in this one. The line flipped for the longest time. Paul Felder was still the favorite. Vick was, up to +130, 150. I think he got, pretty high at some point. Let's see where the highest he got is. Looking at the line movement on best fight odds. Yeah, he got +135 is about the highest he got. But, very interesting. The past couple of days, a lot of money has come in on James Vick. This is a tough fight to call, honestly. I'm honestly a big fan of Paul Felder, not the biggest fan of James Vick. Paul Felder is a Philadelphia guy. He's got, great fights. All of his fights are really exciting. He throws wicked elbows. His fights are usually bloody, exciting, entertaining fights. Vick's fights are usually good too. He's got exciting fights. He definitely doesn't, fight boring. It's just, if you're, a diehard MMA fan, that there's just something dislikable about James Vick. He looks really weird. He, he had that last fight where he was super confident in himself and got knocked out like viciously. And then there's some news about him, his trainer, having some rape charges or something like that, and James Vick is staying with his trainer, through thick and thin, so he gets a lot of criticism for that too. But so it makes this fight a little bit difficult to predict, honestly, because like I said, I'm a fan of Felder, not the biggest fan of Vick, but I honestly like James Vick up until a couple months ago, and then just switch real quick. He's got James Vick's got a nice jab. He's got good kicks as well. And good cardio. He's gone the full 3 rounds a few times against Trinaldo, most notably. It was a pretty high output type of fight, and he won that fight based on output and just landing the cleaner, harder shots throughout the fight. I think Vick's, his footwork isn't very good. He doesn't really seem too comfortable on the feet, even though he's, like I said, he's got good boxing. He's got a few knockouts with the hands. He just, his defense sucks. You saw that in his last fight against against Justin Gaethje. He's got that tall man's defense where he just likes to lean away. He's a 6'3" lightweight where he likes to lean away from punches, and he got caught with a huge overhand by Gaethje in that fight, and it put him to sleep. I'm not talking a TKO knockout where he's conscious and getting some shots on him and the ref stops the fight. I'm talking out cold for minutes, not knowing what the hell happened for 5 minutes after the fight. It was bad. Really, really vicious knockout from James Vick in that fight. So hopefully he's recovered well since then. Hopefully he's I'm sure he has. That fight was all the way back in, I think, August, so he should be better by now. And Paul Felder did not have an easy fight last fight either. He got cut. He got cut with a headbutt. He got cut with punches. He broke his hand in that fight. He took a lot of big shots from Mike Perry. He moved up in weight on short notice and took a fight against Mike Perry on one of the biggest cards of the year. So he was supposed to. I forget who he was supposed to fight, but I think it was actually Vick, and then he got pulled out of that fight. But, Felder, both of these guys not having easy fights, their last fights, so I hope they're at 100% in this fight. I'm sure they are. Felder, in his fight against Oliveira recently, he was taken down and, almost put to sleep by Oliveira, but somehow defended all of Oliveira's submissions. It looked like he had him in a deep Darce choke, but Felder somehow escaped, and from that point on, he was not scared of Oliveira's jiu-jitsu at all. The guy with the most submissions in UFC history, and Felder was engaging with him on the ground and was just sitting in his guard, just raining down ground and pound, throwing elbows, slicing him up, and then he eventually viciously finished Oliveira with some elbows in that fight. Just, man, you watch that fight, I forgot how vicious those elbows were. He lands one hard elbow and you see Oliveira tap out. The ref doesn't see it, and Felder lands 4 more flush elbows that he's not defending one bit. So, pretty sick knockout, honestly. So, Vic does have good submissions. He's gotten a few submissions in the UFC. He's got good jiu-jitsu, but man, after the fact that Oliveira couldn't submit Felder, I really don't see Vic submitting him at all either. This fight's a really hard fight to call because Vic is long. He's got that jab and those long kicks to keep this fight at range. But I don't know. There's a lot of questions with Vic. He had a tough weight cut his last fight. He allegedly cuts from like 190 pounds to 155 pounds in a few weeks' time. So that could always affect the cardio. That could always affect the chin. That might have been what happened in his last fight against Gaethje when he got knocked out. So. He doesn't really check leg kicks that well either, James Vick, and Felder loves throwing leg kicks, so look for Felder to be throwing those leg kicks from the jump, looking to slow down Vick's movement, and then, maybe Felder even, he doesn't really have much wrestling, but, Felder, his elbows are so good, his ground and pound is so good, you might see him try to take this fight to the floor, it might give Vick a false sense of security, thinking he's going to go for some submissions, and then he's going to get pounded out by Felder on the ground, so... I favor Felder in this fight. I just think that he's, I don't know. I think he's the more opportunistic striker. I think he's got more weapons on the feet. I think he's got the better kicks, the harder kicks, and I think I think he's going to win this fight. So the pick is going to be Felder. I think he gets it done by decision. It's a close fight though. It really is. I have no bet on the fight so far. It's going to be more of like a live betting type of fight. But really looking forward to this one. Hell of a matchup. And in the main event of the evening, in the heavyweight division, we have Cain Velasquez, who is 14-2, taking on Francis Ngannou, who is 12-3. The betting line for this one opened up. Cain Velasquez is the favorite at -170. Francis Ngannou at +130. Looking over at 5dimes.eu right now, we see Cain Velasquez at -160, while Ngannou is at +140. So, initially a lot of money came in on Velasquez, but it seems to be creeping back up towards Ngannou now. Where the line is at now, I'd say, is pretty accurate. We have one of the best heavyweights of all time in Cain Velasquez taking on one of the best new age heavyweights in Ngannou. Both of these guys have their strengths and weaknesses. Cain Velasquez, he's got incredible cardio, incredible pace and pressure. He'll put the pace on you. He has done that to almost every one of his opponents. He'll take you down. He'll smash you on the ground. He's got good boxing when he's on the feet. He's got hard leg kicks while he's on the feet. He's fast. He's got good footwork. I'm telling you, he has a little bit of everything. He's truly is one of the best heavyweights of all time. It's a damn shame that his career has been so plagued with injuries, and he's had so much time off. This is his first fight since July of 2016. He's only had 2 fights in the past, I think, 5 or 6 years. So we really have missed out on Cain Velasquez. Pretty much the prime of his career, really, we missed out on because of his injuries, his knee injuries, shoulder injuries. He's had a plethora of problems that have kept him away from fighting. But he's back for this fight. I'm sure he's going to be in great shape. He's going to be looking to get back in there. He's looking to, take out Ngannou and get his way back up to a title shot. But Ngannou, looked tremendous in this last fight. We thought Ngannou was done. We saw him lose to Miocic. He got taken down in that fight and beat, maybe 5 rounds to nothing. Really got humbled in that fight. The fact that he was not a world beater, he could not wrestle at all, he had bad cardio, he's got bad takedown defense, he's got no jiu-jitsu. That was all exposed in that fight, and all those doubts were still in his mind when he fought Derrick Lewis a few months later. Derrick Lewis fight, one of the most infamous fights in UFC history, just a boring, staring matchup where Ngannou did nothing. He was totally gun-shy, barely threw any punches, and then lost that fight. Everyone thought that Francis Ngannou was done, that he was, emasculated by that performance by Stipe Miocic, and he'd never be the same. And he was fighting a tough wrestler in Curtis Blaydes, who's got great takedowns, great top pressure, great ground and pound. Everyone thought Curtis Blaydes would smoke Ngannou. He was a 2-1 favorite in that fight, but what happened? Ngannou comes out and knocks him out in 30 seconds with a huge overhand right, reminding us that Ngannou is still one of the most vicious punchers. He's got insane power, he's got great boxing, and he's still a very, very dangerous fighter. So this fight, Kane is going to be looking to put him on the floor. Kane, being 2.5 years away from the sport, he's not going to have the same reflexes and the same striking ability as he's used to. Back when he was active in 2012, 11 and 12 and 13, he could engage with dangerous strikers on the feet like Junior Dos Santos or Antonio Silva, because he was so confident in himself and he was so active. But when he's fighting 3 times in 6 years or something like that, his timing, his entries, none of that is going to be too precise. So he's got to be careful about that. If he tries fighting like he did against Travis Brown back in 2016, there's a great chance that he gets clipped by a punch and knocked the fuck out by Francis Ngannou, because Kane was sloppy in that fight. He was winning the stand-up exchanges on the feet against Brown, but Brown is a sloppy striker at best. He had a few nice wins in the UFC, but his career is vastly overrated. He went to Edmund Tarverdyan and it pretty much got worse. And Kane was able to rock in with punches in that fight and put him away via TKO in the first round. But Kane is not going to want to fool around in stand-up exchanges at all, man. I would expect him to be super, super cautious, and then look to throw first at all. Look for Ngannou to throw first, and then counter that strike with a takedown. Close the distance. Look to clinch this fight up, dirty box on the inside, and then eventually get this fight to the floor, get top position, maybe pound Ngannou out, or go for a submission. So, it's an interesting fight, because the time off from Kane is a huge factor. That could easily be his Achilles heel in this fight. The fact that he's not used to fighting, his timing is off, his entries are off, and he gets clipped by Ngannou and put to sleep. That is a certainly realistic possibility of happening. Or he could come out there like a world beater. He could be on point. He could have, all those things, like I said, his cardio, his wrestling, his ground and pound, his pressure, his leg kicks, his speed, everything could be on point, and he could be back as one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. It honestly comes down to, I just think who I trust more. Who do I trust more to execute their game plan? Is it a guy who is has caught a few, solid punches and put some good guys out, or is it one of the most notorious best heavyweights of all time? And I'm going to side with Kane in this one. I just think that he's hungry. He's back for a reason. He's not coming back for easy fights. He's not coming back to retire on a high note on a win. He's coming back to get that fucking belt. And the first step to get that belt back is to run through Ngannou. So I think that he will, close the distance, be able to get Ngannou to the floor. And I think that Cain Velasquez will win this fight probably by TKO in the first or second round, maybe by submission as well. But really looking forward to this one. But Cain, man, I'm telling you, if he tries to be cute, tries to have a couple stand-up exchanges on the feet with Ngannou, man, you better be real careful, because Ngannou has got sneaky good striking. He's got insane power, as we all know, and he could blast you into the fucking shadow realm. So great main event. Great card from top to bottom. It's got some really fucking close matchups. Some matchups that are, you could go either way with, that I've been flipping back and forth with all week. Feely and Jury, Rivera and Sterling, Bermudez, Lopez. I'm telling you, almost all these fights are toss-ups. There are only a few, I think, like, Gracie, like Luque, like that deserved, big favorite money. But the rest, man, close matchups, expecting some really good fights. And like I said, man, the UFC really brought it for their first card on ESPN. Looking forward to the fights going down this Sunday night, 9 p.m. start time to the main card. Hope you all enjoyed this fight card, and it's going to be a treat to see the UFC on ESPN. So with that being said, we are going to quickly recap the UFC 234. Actually, before that, let's talk about Bellator. We got Bellator odds this weekend. We got let's see, a few fights I recognize. Roy Nelson plus 175 underdog to Mirko Krokop as a minus 225 favorite. Yeah, man, Krokop's on that good dope. He is juiced to the fucking gills. You can see this dude's 40-something years old, and he's got bigger muscles than ever. So, he's juiced to the tits. We just saw Roy Nelson get knocked out by Sergey Karatonov in his last fight. His boxing looked pretty slow in that fight. if Nelson's able to get the fight to the floor, I think that he'll win. But honestly, I think that Mirko is he's gonna have that power. He's gonna be quick in there. He's gonna be juiced up, and I think that he's gonna win this fight on the feet. And the pick's gonna be Mirko in that fight. We got Czech Congo taking on Vitaly Minakov, the former Bellator heavyweight champion, finally coming back for his first fight in I think like 3 or 4 years, taking on Czech Congo in this one. I really see Minakov winning this fight easily. He's great on the ground. He's a great striker. There's a reason why he was the champion back in 2014-15. As long as his ring rust is not too bad, he's definitely got a winnable opponent in front of him in Czech Congo. Congo just took out Tim Johnson though, so he looked pretty good in that fight. So it's not end all be all. And plus 365, even though I'm going to pick Vitaly Minakov to win this fight, the value is on Congo plus 365. The main event, we got Michael Venom Page taking on Paul Daly in a much awaited matchup. This fight's been talked about for years. Two of the best British strikers in MMA right now, and they're finally meeting up. And the odds, man, Page minus 220, Daly plus 180. The value is all over Paul Daly in this one. Michael Venom Page has fought nobody good. He's been fed easy opponents for his entire career. He's been padded record. He's got really average performances there. He's going up and showing some flashy striking and beating up some bums, while Paul Daly has been fighting at the highest level welterweights for a decade now. Nick Diaz, John Fitch. He just knocked out Lorenz Larkin not that long ago. Paul Daly, I think, has value all over him. I think he's the better striker. I think that Michael Venom Page is just one big hype job, and I think that's going to be really exposed in this fight. And Paul Daly at plus 180, I hope I don't end up with too much money on that line, because I will be betting Daly in that spot. And the one line we have for Bellator 215, we have Matt Mitrione versus Sergey Karatonov. Man, wicked close fight. Two really good boxers. Both of these guys have, really good heavyweight boxing. Karatonov looked sharp in his last fight. His jab was on point. He was butchering Roy Nelson with that jab, and eventually finished him with a barrage of punches. His uppercuts look powerful. Everything, man. Matt Mitrione is a great striker of his own right, though. He was able to outstrike who was that in his most recent fight? Roy Nelson. He beat Roy Nelson 2-1. He was taken down in that fight and lost round 3, but was able to secure rounds 1 and 2. Got knocked out by Bader. He knocked out Fedor. So he's got some power in his hands as well, too. So that one should be really, really close fight. Karatonov's up there in age. I think that Mitrione will be the faster striker in there. And I think that, honestly, Matt Mitrione will probably win this fight just based on his speed. And, he will be the better striker. So Bellator's got great fights going down this weekend on 3 heavyweight fights and 1 welterweight fight. Those are going to be real, real exciting. And then the UFC 234 recap, real quick. We analyzed all 13 of these or 12 of these fights last week, but the main event, Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum, was canceled on the same day notice. Just a brutal punch to the gut for all fight fans in that one. But we still had a pretty great card come through. Jonathan Martinez defeated Luigi Buran, looked really good in that fight. Won the striking, won the grappling, honestly, as well. And Buran looked pretty underwhelming. Callum Potter got knocked out cold by Jalen Turner. He was able to get a takedown, but was not able to secure a submission, and Turner knocked him out quickly after that one. Kyun Hyo Kang and Teruto Ishihara threw the fuck down. Kang eventually getting that the submission via rear naked choke, puts Ishihara to sleep after a pretty exciting slugfest in the feet. We had Kai Kara France defeat Julian Paiva. Paiva, man, making his UFC debut, really impressed. Was a huge underdog, plus 250 or something like that, and looked pretty sharp in there. A lot of people actually picked him to win that fight, but the Aussie getting the nod on the scorecard, the hometown guy. Another really competitive fight was Shane Young versus Austin Arnett. Shane Young got the decision, but man, Arnett, this is as close of a fight as can be for being 30-27. Austin Arnett was winning the first 2 rounds of this fight, both rounds up until like the 4-minute and 30-second mark. His jab was on point. His straight punches were really nice. He was busting Shane Young up, but Shane Young was closing the round strong and throwing bombs in the last 30 seconds and really rocked Arnett at the end of the first 2 rounds and pretty much stole the rounds on the scorecards, and then was able to win round 3. Just based on the fact that he was a fresher fighter, I believe. But you know, so Austin Arnett performed good. His jab looked good, but Shane Young was just, you know, the more just chased the finish more. Was you know, more aggressive with his punches and landed the harder shots throughout the fight. So that's what got him the nod in that one. Devontae Smith scored a beautiful knockout over Dong Hyun Ma. Jimmy Crute knocked out Sam Alvey with a really nice, you know, overhand right. Floored Sam Alvey. Not, you know, pretty questionable stoppage in that one. You know, Sam Alvey really protested the stoppage. The stoppage was bad. It was bad timing from Mark Goddard. The second that Crute landed the punch, and Sam Alvey was on his hands and knees, you know, crawling around the octagon, I think that the fight should have been stopped. I don't think that, and then the fact that you know, Goddard when it go on for a few more seconds and then stopped it, it was definitely a bad call from Goddard. Regardless, Crute looked pretty great. You know, huge overhand right. His striking looked pretty bad on tape, but it looked pretty good tonight, or that night. Excuse me. Montana De La Rosa just dominated Nadia Kassim, taking her down and eventually getting the armbar in the second round of that fight. Ricky Simone and Hani Yahya, a real competitive fight. Simone was able to stuff all of Hani Yahya's shots and, you know, win that fight. You know, Yahya was making it competitive. It was competitive on the feet. You know, Simone was getting tagged by Yahya, but ultimately Simone landing the harder shots, dictating the pace of the fight, and just being the more active, fresher fighter, getting him the decision. Lando Venata ran through Marcos Mariano, getting the submission on him. You know, just a laughable fight like we all expected. Lando Venata took him down. Mariano has no idea what jiu-jitsu is and eventually got submitted. And in the main event, we had Israel Adesanya defeat Anderson Silva 2-1 into the decision. You know, I wasn't really a fan of this fight. You know, it was a little stoic. It was a little, like, you know, cool to see these two legendary guys go strike for strike with one another. But, you know, Israel neither of these guys were chased, you know, the finish. Neither of them were too aggressive. Israel was content to, you know, land a few shots here, a few shots there, and win the rounds. Anderson showed really little tenacity the entire fight. He landed a couple counter punches and was able to steal round 2. But he just didn't show much will to win. It didn't look like he wanted to win 2 rounds. It didn't look like he wanted to knock Israel out. It looked like he just wanted to go out there and, you know, have a sparring match. And that's really what this was. It was, you know, a hard sparring match. So it really, you know, was underwhelming, especially with the main event falling through on 1 day notice, you know, and we ended up getting we got like a staring match when these guys were, like, you know, taunting one another and, you know, doing all types of showboating, and while the fight was underwhelming, you know, so not a fan of the fight at all. Israel calling for a title shot has got to be fucking delusional. There's no way he's getting a title shot. You know, Anderson Silva calling for fights with Nick Diaz, fucking delusional. He beat him 4 years ago. Nick Diaz hasn't fought since. He's a welterweight, and Silva is trying to get him another fight. Like, what type of shit is that, man? Anderson Silva, man, I don't want to see him fight anymore. He's had his time. He's one of the greatest ever. But there's who the hell cares? Who wants to see him fight anymore? You know, like I said. You know, he didn't want to go in there to win. If he's not fighting to win, what the fuck is he fighting for? He's fighting for money and for, you know, just exposure. He loves the sport and whatever. But man, you're gonna put him in there against a guy who's gonna knock him out one of these times, and then you're gonna realize the mistake you went. If Israel would have went 100% on him, then he could have floored Silva easily, but he didn't. He was tentative. He was, you know, too respectful of Silva. You know, the fight was just, you know, frustrating, honestly. A frustrating main event. So, that's my thoughts on that card. You know, we recapped the entire UFC 234 event, you know, all 11 of those fights. We talked about a few of the Bellator fights going down this weekend, and we analyzed and predicted all 13 of the UFC on ESPN 1 fights going down this Sunday night. The props are not out yet. We've been waiting on them for a long time, so hopefully those drop soon. Hopefully we're able to get some more some more cash on these lines, and hopefully we're able to make some coin on Sunday night. So I hope the betting gods are in your favor for this one. Thank you all for tuning in. I want to give a thank you to my affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, and ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious beings tuning into the podcast, I thank you for listening to episode 49 of Martian Mixed Martial Arts, and I will see you guys next week. Peace.